about the whole adult breastfeeding thing.
This was a brother Abbas.
Abbas, yes, yeah. It probably was him. And you watch the David Wood video, and they do the same thing. Now, for me, when I first kind of approached the whole issue of this, it was like, oh, well, that's weird. Obviously, because it's the first reaction to it. It's not strange to hear that and think, oh, well, that is strange. And when you look at it, you read this thing, and it's like, right, so this woman's having an issue with her husband because they've got someone in their house who's like a younger man, and he's a bit paranoid about it. He's, his heart's a bit unsettled because he's not a mahram. He's not, he's not blood. He's not within the family. And so she goes to him, to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with this concern. And keep in mind, we have this religion which is constantly critiqued for being overly conservative compared to modern standards. We have huge standards of etiquettes in terms of the aura, where there's massive parts of the female body that are not allowed to be shown. And this is one of the major things that are constantly being brought up about Islam, about how strict it is, about the fact that women can't be on their own with non-mahrams. And then you think about this, and then you hear that he says to her, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fareed, you're the Arabic speaker here, but the word that's used for suckling can be meant indirectly or directly. So the Arabic itself, you can use the same word if you're giving someone milk from a bottle.
Yeah.
So it's not specific to suckling on the woman, with skin contact. So the word itself is very vague. And if you speak Arabic, which Christian Prince does, you have to be aware of that ambiguity. Now, obviously, you look at the story here. You have this woman approaches the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with this concern. He uses this word, which is quite ambiguous, and she says, "How can you expect me to suckle him? He's an adult." And then the Prophet laughs. Now, if you take into context that, or if you understand the idea that Islam is one of the most conservative religions going, like it has strict rulings on etiquette, and the Prophet laughs. And to me, when I heard that, it's like, obviously he's laughing because she didn't pick up on the way he meant that word. She's not noticed its ambiguity. The first thing that's popped into her head is, say, the suckling you would do with a child, and not the other use of the word where you could put it into a bottle or into a cup and give it to that person. And if you look at David Wood's video on this, where he's using rhetoric here, and David Wood is a master at rhetoric. Like he's a philosophy. Is he a PhD in philosophy?
So I'm not sure about PhD, but
he's got a master's, or it's one of them. It's above graduate anyway. So he's aware of all this. He's aware of how you present an argument is enough to be compelling to, say, the layman. And what he does is he emphasizes on this laugh, and he paints this picture in the person's head. He's like, the creepiest laugh you've ever seen. Like, and he puts emphasis on that, and he completely reconfigures how you see this story. It turns from something innocent, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is laughing at the fact that this woman's misunderstood what he said. Obviously, he didn't mean it in a direct sense, where she would have to have direct suckling with a young man, for a number of reasons. One, he's not a mahram. Two, like, you can't show your aura to anyone. Like, and when you these are rules, this is like commanded within Islam. You can't break. Any going beyond that is haram. And if you understand that that's haram, you understand then that the word suckling here is meant in the indirect sense, not the direct sense, because the direct means to do a lot of things that have already been forbidden. And so it's obvious what he meant. And it's obvious that the laugh was a playful one, like, oh, you've misunderstood me. That's obviously not what I meant. Like, go in private, put the milk into a bowl, give it to him. And then you can see this by the fact that, you know, the husband was, his heart was settled on the issue after this. And that doesn't make sense if he did the opposite thing. If he's worried about the fact that there's this non-mahram in the house with his wife and blah, 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 why on earth would it make more sense to suggest that direct suckling resolves that issue and not make it worse? When from the context of the story, it doesn't seem obvious that he even knows that his wife spoke to the Prophet about this problem either. So, but this is a thing. This is rhetoric, and this is what CP is doing in the video that I'm commenting on. And I guess it was stupid of me to think that it was completely obvious what he was doing, and so not to comment on it. But subhanAllah, it just goes completely over people's heads. Like, and these are the same people that will 1 minute complain that Islam is too conservative, Islam is too strict in terms of you know, the rulings with mahrams, with awra, and then completely, I don't know whether it's consciously or unconsciously, purposely or not, they forget that they ever make these arguments, and then all of a sudden Islam becomes this weird hippie religion where grown men can suckle on non-mothers, you know, people that are not the mother. And so this is rhetoric. This is, and when you see it, it's clear. And if any of you could go and watch any of these videos again, and you see how their use of language shapes their argument, how it paints, it makes, they're forcing you to picture the Prophet laughing in a creepy way, and he's like creepy, and he's emphasizing it. That all of this affects how you hear the argument. Now, if you're trained in that, you spot it a mile off. If you know, if you've studied philosophy, if you've studied logic, if you've studied reason, rhetoric, you can see when this is occurring. You can see when someone's being ingenuine, and you can see when they're just trying to lead you to like accepting a particular thing that they don't. You know, that his mission is simply bastardize Islam. His mission is to get you to hate it, to get you to see it as evil, to see it as you know, like as blasphemy, as something that you need to run away from. And I very much get the impression from a lot of these people, CP being one, David Wood being the other, and I could list countless of them, where this is the goal to the extent that they really are not bothered about how they achieve that goal.
Yeah. 100%.
And you know, and they go all out with their mastery of rhetoric. And
you'd be surprised, Yusuf. You know, I mentioned the videos that I made 12, 13 years ago. They were on this very topic. Subhanallah. So this is something that it just does the rounds. It just keeps coming around.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at the time, and this is think back over a decade, but there's a hadith where I think it's Salama, may God be pleased with her, who was one of the wives of Prophet peace be upon him, who says that this event was an exception. Specifically, this son who'd grown up with this woman in her household before this concept of mahram and non-mahram would, you know, become clear in the religion. So he was in this grey area where she had raised him as a son, and now suddenly, okay, there's no such thing as actually adoption. You have to, you know, this is someone who would be a non-mahram for you, and her husband was upset with this. So we have a clarification of the event, and that the fact this is an exception just for I think the Sahaba's name was Salim. I think I can't remember the full, but
Salam Mawla Abi Hudayfa.
Subhanallah. So the evidence is even there that it's an exception, and so it's not a generalized. Everyone can go ahead and do this, but the way that it's presented is you'll get lots of links to different readings of the same hadith to make it seem as if many people were given this concession, this not concession, but this ruling. But it's only for one person.
Yeah.
Ever only for one person. That's probably the thing to highlight it. And we have the hadith that says that this was simply that, and the Prophet's wives, you know, may Allah be pleased with them, all said that this was not something they would consider to be allowed, except for this one case where the Prophet peace be upon him allowed it. But so your point really about learning the rhetoric and recognizing the caricature, making a caricature out of what the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him was is a key thing to understanding argumentation. So Jazakallah khair, I appreciate that insight from both of you. Alhamdulillah.
No problem. Bismillah.